Hello friends, this is Joseph, and today, by your request, I'm going to be doing a Boros deck tech on Adriana, Captain of the Guard. I really hope you enjoy this deck tech video, and leave comments in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your suggestions. So Adriana, Captain of the Guard, is a 4/4 human knight, legendary creature in Boros, with the ability Melee. And Melee is where if you attack an opponent, it gets +1/+1 for every opponent you're attacking. So this is a commander that ideally you want to be attacking in multiple directions, spreading out your damage so that all your creatures can get anthemed. Anyways, on with the deck tech. So one unique thing about this deck is that I want to be playing more control. I want to be playing a lot of low casting cost instances and kind of control the game. A lot of Boros decks you see is being basically combat and damage oriented and just trying to win through attacking. And I'm trying to make a little bit more of a control version where this is essentially a blue deck in disguise. And I'm running Adriana as kind of a way of distracting my opponent from what its true power and intentions are, but meanwhile still trying to actually get benefit from her abilities. So one of the unique cards is Mana Tithe. A lot of people don't expect Mana Tithe or Dawn Charm as a way of countering spells. Now I'm running Price of Progress and very few non-basic lands. This is a very powerful card and can just surprise your opponents in the late game. You know, you're seeing a lot of 3, 4, 5 color decks coming out, especially with the new precons just coming out in 2017, where you have a 5 color dragon deck and such, and this will be able to do a lot of damage to your opponents. Lapse of Certainty. This is a very special card that I wanted to build around. It's basically a memory lapse, but in white for 1 more mana. I'm not sure if any of you even heard of this card. It's very old. And basically it just counter target spell and it puts it back on top of their library, so it ruins their next card draw. Then we have Orem Thunder. This one I like because you can destroy target artifact or enchantment, and if you kick it, you may also destroy a creature often by doing damage to a creature. So this is kind of a nice one. You're often always getting a 2-for-1. It's fairly costed. Aurelia's Fury. This is both offensive and defense. You can tap down your opponent's creatures to swing in and win the game in the late game, as well as if your opponent's attacking you, you can tap down their attackers, and sometimes you're able just to burn a whole bunch of tokens away so they can't kill you. So that's a nice thing. And then Return to Dust, removing artifacts or enchantments. So those are my instant speed spot removal. I'm running quite a few of them. One of the best ways to counteract lack of card draw in Boros is by playing board wipes that can give you really good card advantage. So I'm running Vandal Blast to destroy all artifacts. Arc Bond is an instant speed board wipe often, because I'm running a huge amount of creatures, and I'm running all creatures at 4 and 5 casting costs that I could, because the ideal play for this deck is to turn 1 put down a land, turn 2 player like Medallion or a Boros Signet, and then turn 3 play into your 4-drop creatures, and turn 4 you have the option of casting Adriana or any of your 5-drop creatures like Baneslayer Angels and things. And anyways, the Arc Bond is really nice because if you're exchanging creatures in combat, you can often wipe a significant amount of them off the field. Volcanic Fallout, again, one big weakness to this deck is going to be token decks. You're running a few big, nice, powerful creatures, but as soon as you face a token deck that is attacking you with a whole bunch of creatures and are going wide, you don't often have enough blockers to deal with it. So having a counter to token deck is essential, and all of your creatures have at least 3 toughness or more, so this won't kill a single creature in your deck, and will often kill a lot of those token decks before they get running, and it can't be countered. So I'm running Blood Moon. I have a little bit of land destruction in the deck. It's more as a way of ramping than anything, because you have to look at, Boros is really terrible at ramping, but they're really good at destroying lands, and I'd be cautious if you're going to play land destruction, and talk with your meta, make sure that they're fine with it. And you want to play it very fairly and strategically so you don't put a target on your head. But anyways, I'm running Blood Moon so that non-basic lands become mountains. This both color fixes for me sometimes because I play more plains. I have Valakut in the deck, so later on, if I have more than 5 mountains and my non-basics then come into play as mountains and can burn people or kill creatures, and it does quite a few different synergies with the deck, so I really like Blood Moon in it. Now, this is a very interesting card. It's kind of like a Vandal Blast, but for enchantments, and you can cast it instant speed. But the big thing is if you play another white spell on your turn, you can cast this for free. Now, this is really nice because you can do some combos where you cast Path to Exile, remove 1 creature, and then destroy all the enchantments for free, and it really surprises people, and this is one of those control cards I just wanted to play. It's very unique. So it's kind of more of my own personal flavor in the deck. Then Wrath of God, just one of the best board wipes. I'm choosing to run Rout because you can play it for 7 mana and play it at instant speed, and I want more instant speed board wipes and options, as you can see. But I would recommend putting in Terminus or Hallowed Burial instead if you're making this yourself, for the sake that both Wrath of God and Rout and the next board wipe, Blasphemous Act, all do damage or destroy creatures. So if an opponent has indestructible creatures, you won't be able to get rid of them. That's a big weakness, and that's where you want to save your Path to Exiles and Swords to Plowshare for those indestructible creatures if you can. So yeah, that is one thing I'd recommend for upping the board wipes. But yeah, board wipes can give you a lot of card advantage, as Boros does struggle with drawing cards. I'm running very few ramp cards because my curve is very low. My top of the curve is like 6. Well, I have 1 card at 7, a couple cards at 6, but most of them are 5 and 4 and less, so keep that in mind. But I have Soul Ring, it's a staple. I have both medallions, as they make all of your 4-drops into 3-drops. So like I was mentioning, the ideal play is to play turn 1 land, turn 2 play into a medallion or the Boros Signet, and then turn 3 you can play a 4-drop, and then turn 4 you can already play your commander. I'm running Ruination again, same idea as Blood Moon. It kind of acts as a ramp spell because often when you're facing against like green decks or blue decks that draw lots of cards or ramping or doing different things, you just can't keep up, and one way to hinder a lot of those decks is just destroying their non-basic lands. This is a lot nicer than Armageddon because it's more one-sided for you, and you want to play this very strategically. You know, playing it late in the game can really devastate decks and often might be seen as in a negative light, but if you play it early in the game on turn 4 and you see a few lands, it's nice. But at worst, you can play this politically. Maybe there's a Gaia's Cradle that's out of control, and you talk with your table and say, hey, if I get rid of this Gaia's Cradle, and will you not attack me for a turn or something, then this can be easily a political piece and kind of acts like a pillage at worst. So play it very carefully. And same thing with Wake of Destruction. This is one that I again like, because the 3 most popular colors I see is blue, black, and green, and they're probably the more powerful colors. White is definitely one of the best support colors, but Wake of Destruction can really hinder those green decks that are ramping way too quickly. It can put a stop on like Omnath or some other decks that ramp really fast and kind of catch you up. But again, this is a little bit color restrictive with 3 red, and be cautious. But those are some of my ramp spells. So one big weakness to Boros decks is lack of card draw. I've chose to run Skull Clamp. Wheel of Fortune is probably the best card draw spell there is in red, but it is pricey, so you know, if you can't, I'm sure there's budget alternatives. Temple Bell, this one I added in recently. I like the idea of playing Howling Mine, but I don't like Howling Mine giving your opponents cards before it gives you cards, and often it gets destroyed before it makes it back to your turn, therefore giving you no card advantage whatsoever. It just helped your opponents. Whereas Temple Bell, you can tap this at the end step of the person before you to draw a card and get the first benefit from it, and play this very politically, where sometimes you don't need cards in hand, so you just don't use it, and sometimes you're like, hey, if I let you draw a card, will you not attack me? Or you can play it very politically, so it's very nice. Mind's Eye. Again, 5 casting cost is kind of the top of the curve, so, you know, you're often playing this when you only have 1 or 2 cards left in hand, and maybe you have a turn when you're not actually using your mana for anything, so you end up just drawing 3 or 4 cards as it goes around the table. This one I'd play later in the game. Reforge the Soul is a budget version of Wheel of Fortune. Staff of Nin. And this can also kill a lot of utility creatures. Specific ones that you want to kill is like Blood Artist, or if there's a Glen Eldra that just had a persist trigger put onto it, then you can kill it, and different things. Runeborn Hellkite, there is a sub-dragon theme / angel theme, and this just adds a few more dragons to the deck, is mostly why it's there. But I also like it how you can exile it from your graveyard to get a kind of a wheel effect as well. And Dragon Mage. These are 2 top of the curve. Like, this is literally the top of your curve here. The only 6 and 7 casting cost spells, and they're only there so that you can draw a full hand of new cards. So I think they're totally fine. You're often using these abilities when you only have 1 or 2 cards left in hand, and it's ideal to use these abilities after somebody tutored for a card so that you can kind of mess up their game-winning combos, but it is definitely a nice way of kind of replenishing your hands. I only have 8 card draw spells. That may not be enough, but you know, it's really hard to find good card draw, and these are some of the best ones that I personally think work in Boros decks. And because we're very creature heavy, we want protection and haste enablers, so Swiftfoot Boots gives protection and haste, same with Lightning Greaves. Dragon Tempest, we are running quite a few dragons, I think like 8 or 9 of them, so this can sometimes ping things and hurt your opponents, but it also gives haste to all your creatures because all your creatures are flyers except for Adriana. And this is where I think Aurelia would be a more powerful option, because if all your creatures are 4 and 5 casting cost, and I explained how the curved worked, then Aurelia on turn 6 with like maybe 1 or 2 angels on the field, and you're able to swing in and get additional combat step or give pseudo vigilance to your team, that ends up being a really powerful way of having an explosive finish and be able to play both offensively and defensively. Org Battle Driver kind of anthems the team and gives everything haste. Urbrask, I like this one because it's also a tempo play. It slows down your opponent's decks and gives you haste, so it speeds up yours. Blind Obedience, same thing. Your opponent's stuff comes in and play tapped, can slow them down and kind of make it to your level because you're not able to ramp as much, and this can really slow them down. Same with the Luxodon Gatekeeper, because this one makes their lands come into play tapped. And then Duelist Heritage is another really fun card, one of my personal favorite white cards. I put into any one of my white decks if I can, because sometimes you can literally just make your opponent's creatures get double strike when they're attacking another opponent. And that is really a fun way of interacting with your opponent's side of the field, playing politically, and other times you're able to just give your own creatures double strike and do more damage. So it's both offensive and defensive, and those are kind of my combat trick cards and ways of protecting my creatures. So I have a huge stack of creatures. There's 30 in all. Specifically, there's 25 here. I already showed you a few, but half the deck is creatures. Restoration Angel is mostly there to be able to play it at instant speed, so you can hold up mana to play like Return to Dust or Lapse of Memory or something, and if you don't need to, then you can flash it in. It can be fun for combat tricks and things. Angel of Finality, she's there as graveyard hate, so you can exile somebody's graveyard. Emiria Angel, this is a good value creature. You're getting 3/3 for 4 with flying, and you're pumping out bird tokens, so it's pretty good. Guardian Seraph, I like this one because a big weakness to the deck is tokens, and things like Goblin Bombardment triggers and such will get nullified with this, because if they're flinging like 20 creatures at you doing 1 damage from each source, then this is going to prevent each instance of that 1 damage doing nothing to you, right? So this can protect you, and it's a good body. Indomitable Archangel, I'm not really having it in here for Metalcraft because I don't have that many artifacts, and it will rarely ever be active, but it is a 4/4 for 4 and has flying, so it's a good creature. Angelic Field Marshal can give vigilance to your team and gets stronger if you have your commander out, so sometimes it's a 5/5 for 4. It's just a very powerful creature. Gisela, I am not running the other meld card with her. That might be an option, because I do like having both of them in a deck together. But she is just a miniature Baneslayer Angel and is very powerful. Sublight Archangel, again, you often only have 1 or 2 creatures on field. So when you're often attacking with one, defending with the other, then giving your creatures Exalted is pretty nice. I would recommend with this deck, though, that don't play out your cards too quickly, because you can easily run out of cards in hand. And you should always try to keep at least 1 or 2 creatures in hand. Like, maybe have 1 or 2 creatures out on the battlefield, so you have enough of a board presence to not be attacked, but also you don't want to be the biggest threat. You want to play your cards after somebody else plays a big threat. So when somebody plays Doubling Season and then you play like Sublight Archangel and she's the only creature you have on the field and you only have a couple creatures, most people aren't going to get rid of her. They're going to get rid of the Doubling Season. They're going to waste their cards someplace else. And then you just want to make sure that you have enough creatures to keep up with the board state, but not get too far ahead of yourself, because if you get too aggressive, this deck could fall flat on its face. You might run out of cards in hand if you get a couple bad board wipes, whatever. But that's kind of why I'm saying, like, you want to have a couple creatures in hand at any given point. Don't play them all out too quickly. Be very careful. But anyways, there's Linvala and Angel of Jubilation. I like Angel of Jubilation because it buffs the team and prevents your opponents from sacrificing creatures for spells and abilities. It's pretty nice. Archangel of Tithes kind of acts like a half Ghostly Prison and can enable your attacks to be a little harder to block. Flame Reeved Phoenix. This is one that I had that's foil, looks nice, but it's kind of cool because it has this built-in recursion. So if people don't pay the tribute cost, it gets haste, and when it dies, it returns to your hand, so you can cast it again. And, you know, if people keep not paying that tribute cost, you can just keep casting it if it dies, and it kind of gives you this pseudo card advantage. On the other hand, it ends up being a 5/5 for 4 mana, which is a really good value creature, right? So it's very powerful. Then on this other stack, you see Skyship Stalker. Again, it's a 3/3 for 4 with flying, and it has different relevant abilities. Sometimes you're able to Dragon Breath him and give him double strike, and he swings in for lots of damage. Other times you give him first strike so you can defend, or if he needs haste. Thunderbreak Regent, I like this one because if a dragon becomes the target of a spell or ability, you can lightning bolt somebody. Firemane Avenger, you're often not getting the triggered ability, but it's still a 3/3 flyer for 4, and you know, with Adriana, this kind of complements it because you're wanting to attack with creatures. This is getting into the 5-drops now. But you saw that there's this massive stack of 4-drops, like, there's a lot. So Voidstone Gargoyle is a really interesting creature, and I've always wanted to play it, but it's never really made it into deck, so I'm basically specifically running it so I can see how it works and play test it. You never know how good a card is until you actually put it into a deck, right? Like, there's certain favorites that you'll always want to run, but this is kind of a pet card that I want to try out. And it has a Nevermore attached to it, so again, this is a way to kind of prevent your opponent from going off. If you're seeing that you're facing a Prosh deck and you know they need Prosh to really combo off and win, and they have all their combo pieces out, you can often cast this, name their commander so they can't cast it, and again, you want to play politically if you can, or if somebody misplays and you figure out a card in their hand or whatever the case may be, this can stop some decks from going off, and it's pretty nice. You equip a Swiftfoot Boots on this and then all of a sudden they can't deal with it, and it's pretty nice. Herald of the Host. This is basically an upgraded Sierra Angel. I really like Sierra Angel, but it's not good enough and not flashy enough to really make it into a commander decks. But with the Myriad ability, if you're attacking a player and you get all the Myriad trigger attacks every opponent, and then it works really nicely with melee because now all your angels are getting buffed. So if you have 3 opponents and you attack with this, and you get another 2 Herald of the Host attacking like the other two players, then each one of them will get +3/+3 with the melee trigger, right? So that is quite nice. It works really well with the commander. And it's good to have a few cards that synergize well with the commander, so it's not just like a total waste of a commander. Then Sun-Scorched Region, this is one that I want to play, partly for a little bit of life gain to keep you in the game, but I often imagine that everybody's going to at least play 2 spells a turn, and if you cast this on turn 4, turn 5, and then the other 3 people each play 2 spells, this ends up becoming a 10-9 with flying back on your turn, and that's a big creature. It's really efficient. Scale Lore Reckoner. This is a new one from the new Dragon Commander Precon. I've not been able to buy any of the Precon decks yet. I haven't really had a chance, but I got this from a trade, and there is a bit of enough dragons to, I think, make it worth it, but it's still a good 4/4 flyer, like, at worst. Like, all the creatures at worst are still going to be evasive, good blockers, good attackers. Then there's Baneslayer Angel, Archangel Avacyn. This is an alternative commander option for the deck. You know, if you want a flashy commander, then you can use Archangel Avacyn. And a lot of creatures do have 4 toughness. Even if she flips and does 3 damage to each creature and player, it still enables your creatures often to survive and can wipe a good chunk of the board. Stormbreath Dragon, Flying Haste, Protection from White. And I really like this one for its Monstrosity ability, because again, if you're facing a blue deck that has a Consecrated Sphinx out and they draw like 10 cards, then all of a sudden you make it Monstrosity 3 and just hose them for drawing cards. It really penalizes them. Thundermaw Hellkite, again, a good one. And finally, Anya. Thundermaw Hellkite taps down all your opponent's flyers that can enable you to swing in and win the game, which is really nice. And Anya is another alternative commander. I mean, the only irony I find with Anya is that if you're facing an opponent and they're under 20 life, typically you're in a position where you can just kill them off, and if your opponent loses and it leaves the game, then she also becomes weaker. But on the other side, she scales with the game. So, you know, you often cast her for 5 for a 4/4 flyer, and then later on you cast her for 7 if she's your commander, and she often comes in as a 7/7 flyer. And then later on, if you cast her again at 9, she might be a 10/10 with Indestructible and flying, right? So it scales nicely. It's a good alternative commander. There is a new cat that came out in the Commander Precon that you can flash in to prevent your opponent from drawing cards and you drawing cards instead. I would highly recommend putting that in this deck if you can. And finally, onto the lands. I do want to mention though that, like, with creatures, like, Boros does excel with some of the best creatures in the game, and they're very efficient, so you don't want to be neglecting what Boros does well in. And I still think it's good to, even if you're trying to make a Boros deck that functions like a blue deck, you still want to take full advantage of the red and the white and not completely forsake its powerful abilities and its strengths. But you also want to be careful with its weaknesses of card draw. I think I don't have to worry about ramping in this deck though. Anyways, Myriad Landscape, it kind of is a ramp spell. Emeria Sky Ruin. If you have 7 or more planes, you can return creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield. Kind of gives some card advantage. I'm running 15 planes and 14 mountains. Valakut, if you have more than 5 mountains out, then every new mountain comes in is basically a lightning bolt. Flamekin Village, one of my favorite cards for giving haste. I mean, again, often you're only casting 1 or 2 creatures in a turn, and half the creatures already have haste built in, so this often you're only needing to target 1 creature to give haste. And same with Slayer Stronghold, and I like how this gives vigilance and boosts them because that works well with melee, and you can attack and block, so that's good. Temple of Triumph, a little bit of scrying is nice, and this one's nice for sometimes you only have 3 lands in your opening hand and you can bounce 1 and you kind of at least don't miss your land drops. It's nice. And then Command Tower, of course. So there you have it. That is my Adriana Captain of the Guard deck. I hope you enjoyed it. I was trying to make this deck with any of the Boros commanders in mind, so it's not specifically Adriana as at the helm, but you can run literally any of the Boros commanders and I think the deck would run fine. Aurelia would be the most powerful. Giselle is also really powerful, but both of them scream removal, and I don't want this deck to necessarily have all their creatures removed as soon as they hit the battlefield. You want to play your spells carefully. You want to wait until there's bigger, more dangerous threats out. Like somebody plays an Eldrazi and then you play a Baneslayer, well, then it may not actually kill your Baneslayer because the Eldrazi might be a bigger threat at the time, right? So, and you don't want to play all your creatures out too quickly. You want to keep mana open sometimes. Sometimes you're literally not playing a spell in a turn so that you don't just empty your hand out too quickly, and that you can play some of your instant speed spells. And this deck, I think, is going to be a very powerful deck in the right hands with the right pilot in the right meta. But it can fall flat on its face, and you know, card draw is going to be an issue. So yeah, this is my version of Adriana. I was trying to make it more like a control-based deck with a little bit more blue influence in it. There are blue Elemental Blast and Hydro Blast that I think are really powerful, but they are a little bit too limited, and one card maybe that you could take out is Mana Tithe, because again, you know, it's good in the early game, good situationally, but sometimes it just does nothing, and it's just a dead card. So that is the first card I maybe would take out for something better, and maybe run Terminus or something else to hit those indestructible creatures. But anyways, there's Adriana, Captain of the Guard. I really enjoyed making this deck. Sorry this video took a while to make. I needed to like really think it through on Boros. It was a lot more difficult to make this deck list than other decks. It wasn't so simple and cookie cutter. And I was trying to run unique cards that don't see much play. And I don't want to be copying my friend's Aurelia deck either, because he has a very powerful Boros deck that runs all the swords and the Jitte and a whole bunch of things. I wanted to stay away from kind of enchantments and the artifacts and run a little bit more instants and sorceries and kind of do other things. So I was trying to make this deck unique in my meta and also be able to answer the various problems that it's going to face. And yeah, I'd love to hear your suggestions. Leave comments in the comment section below. Love new subscribers. Have a good week.